Now, as we discussed on the determination of the place of supply of goods and services in the previous module, we now move on to discuss the time of supply of goods and services in this module. Let us now move on to understand what is the time of supply. The time of supply in case of supply of goods would be the earliest of the following dates. It would be the date of issue of invoice by the supplier, or the last date on which he is required to issue the invoice if he has not already issued the invoice, or the date of receipt of payments in case of advance payments received. It is to be noted that when the supplier receives an amount exceeding rupees 1000 as compared to the amount indicated in the tax invoice, then in that case the time of supply to the extent of such excess would be the date of issue of the revised invoice. Now, as we discussed the time of supply for supply of goods, the next is the time of supply for receipt of interest, late fees or penalties for delayed payment of consideration. In this case, the time of supply would be the date of receipt of interest, late fee or such penalty. Now, let us understand the time supply what we discussed earlier with the help of an example. An invoice was issued on 30th of April 2017 and the last date of issue of invoice was also the 30th of April 2017. The receipt of consideration was 5th of May 2017. Therefore, time of supply in this case would be the date of issue of invoice, which is 30th of April 2017. In the next case, invoice was issued on 10th of May 2017. Goods were removed on 30th of April 2017. Last date for issue of invoice was 30th of April 2017 and the payment or consideration was received on 15th of May 2017. In this case, the time of supply would be the last date of issue of invoice, which is 30th of April 2017. Let us discuss another case where the invoice was issued on 30th of April 2017. Date of removal and the last date of issue of invoice is also 30th of April 2017. However, the consideration for such goods was received in parts. The first payment was received on 15th of April 2017 and the final payment was received on 15th of May 2017. So in this case, the time of supply would be 15th of April 2017, that is date of payment, where the payment was received on 15th of April 2017. Where the payment was received on 15th of May 2017, in this case the time of supply would be the date of issue of invoice, that is 30th of April 2017. And let us now discuss the last case, which is date of issue of invoice is 30th of April, date of removal and last date of invoice is 1st of May 2017. Again, partial payment was received on 15th of April 2017 and partial was received on 1st of May 2017. In this case, the time of supply for the payment received on 15th of April 2017 would be the date of receipt of payment, that is 15th of April 2017. And for the case where the payment was received on 1st of May 2017, the time of supply would be the date of last date of issue of invoice, that is 1st of May 2017. As we discussed the time of supply of goods for normal goods in previous slides, we now move on to discuss the time of supply of goods in case of reverse charge. So as you all know, reverse charge means when the liability to pay the tax is shifted from the supplier of goods to the recipient of the goods. This generally happens when purchases are made from an unregistered supplier or in case of notified supplies. In such cases, the time of supply of goods would be earliest of the date of receipt of goods, date of payment, or the date immediately following 30 days from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. It is to be noted that the date of payment is construed to be earlier of the date when it is entered in the books of accounts or it is debited in the bank account. Where it is not possible to determine the time under all the above three cases, in that case the time of supply would be the date of entry in the books of accounts of the recipient of supply. Now, let us understand what would be the time of supply in case of continuous supply of goods. So, assuming a situation where successive statements of accounts or successive payments are involved in case of continuous supply of goods. In this case, the time of supply would be the date of expiry of the period to which such successive statement of accounts or successive payments are related. If no such successive statements or accounts are prepared, then the date of issue of invoice or any other document or the date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, would be treated as the time of supply. What is the time of supply in case of uncertain goods? That is, goods removed before it is known that the supplies will be taking place. In this case, the time of supply would be the earliest of the time when it becomes known that the supply has taken place, or 6 months from the date of removal of goods. And the residual category, that is, what would be the time of supply if it is not covered under any of the cases we discussed above, like normal supply or reverse charge or continuous supply or supply under uncertain goods. In that case, the time of supply where the periodical return has to be filed would be the date on which such return is to be filed. In any other case, the time of supply would be the date on which the CGST, SGST and IGST is paid to the credit of the government. So far we have discussed and understood what is the time of supply in case of goods. Now let us move on to understand what is time of supply in case of services. The time of supply in case of normal supply of services would be the earliest of the following dates. When the invoice is issued within the prescribed time period, then it would be the date of issue of invoice or the date of receipt of payment. When the invoice is not issued within the prescribed time period, then it would be the date of completion of the provision of service or the date of receipt of payment. In case where the above two situations do not apply, then the date on which the recipient shows receipt of services in his books of account would be construed to be time of supply of services. The time of supply of service for interest, late fee or penalty levied for delayed payment of consideration would be the date of receipt of such interest, late fee or penalty. We now begin to discuss the examples of time of supply of services. So we begin with the case where invoices are issued within the prescribed time period. Say for instance, the date of completion of service is 1st of July, date of invoice is 28th of July, date of receipt of payment is 10th of August, and date of entry in books of accounts is July 27th. In this case, the time of supply would be the date of issue of invoice, that is July 20th. In the next case, the date of completion of service is 1st of July, date of invoice is 28th of July, date of receipt of payment is 25th of July, and date of entry in books of accounts is 27th of July. In this case, the time of supply would be date of receipt of payment, that is 25th of July, because this is the earliest of the 3 dates. Next is the case where invoices are not issued within the prescribed time period. So in this case, the date of completion of service is 1st of July, date of invoice is 5th of August, date of receipt of payment is 25th of July, and date of entry in books of accounts is 27th of July. Therefore, in this case, the time of supply would be 1st of July, which is the date of completion of service. In the next case, the date of completion of service is 1st of July, date of invoice is 5th of August, date of receipt of payment is 30th of June, and date of entry in books of accounts would be July 27th. So in this case, the time of supply would be date of receipt of payment, that is June 30th, because this is the date which is the earliest of the 3 dates. Now let us discuss the time of supply in case of continuous supply of services and the invoice is issued. But before we move on to discuss the time of supply, let us understand what do you mean by the term continuous supply of service. So continuous supply of service means supply of services provided or agreed to be provided continuously or on a recurrent basis, which is under a contract for a period exceeding 3 months and with periodic payment obligations. And it includes supply of such service as central and state government may notify in this regard. So while we understand the term continuous supply, let us now understand what are the due dates of payments. So let us first see continuous supply of service in case of renting of immovable property. If the due date of payment is ascertainable from the contract, then the time of supply would be on or before the due date of payment. However, if due date of payment is not ascertainable from contract, then the time of supply would be the time before or at the time when supplier of service receives the payment. And if the service payment is linked to the completion of the event, then the time of supply would be on or before the date of completion of the event. For instance, repairs and maintenance services. Lastly, let us discuss the time of supply of services in case of reverse charge. Payment of GST under reverse charge basis for supply of services is applicable when services are availed from an unregistered service provider by a registered service provider, or if those are notified supplies. In such cases, the time of supply of services would be earlier of date of payment or date immediately following 60 days from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. In case it is not possible to determine the time of supply under clause A or B above, the time of supply shall be the date on entry in the books of accounts of the recipient of supply. Further, in case of an associated enterprises where the supplier is located outside India, the time of supply shall be the earliest of date of entry in the books of accounts of recipient or date of payment. With this, we end our module on time of supply of goods and services. In the next module, we will discuss on the payment of taxes under the goods and services tax.